Russ Vought, one of the architects behind Project 2025, is back at it this time. The media has gotten their hands on a memo that he issued called the lapse memo, which talks about how different government agencies can issue RIFs, reduction in forces for their employees during the shutdown, as a way to basically downsize federal government and employees, people that had jobs with the federal government, because this is a long known goal of Russ Vought, and he is the architect behind this, and he's tried to do this during Trump 1 administration, and his dreams are finally coming true. So today we're talking about Russ Vought and this sneaky means of firing hardworking federal employees. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Before we go on, remember to hit that subscribe button down there so you could keep up with this content. Brian, where do we start with this issue?
Yeah, I think you raise a very good point here, Shant, is that let's call, hypocrisy where we see hypocrisy. So the administration's running around saying, "Oh, this is Democrat-caused government shutdown. This is terrible. Look at what's happened. This is awful. Look what you're doing to these people." And meanwhile, Russell Vought, who is, one of the inner circle, one of the evil empire architects here, is actually using this as an opportunity. They see this as an opportunity. They were looking. In fact, this came out. This memo, which has recently been leaked, came out well before the government actually shut down.
Yeah. Or it's dated before the shutdown. Yeah, that's right.
Because they expected there would be a shutdown, and they saw, they see opportunity to be mean and petty wherever it can occur. And so what the memo basically says, and then we'll talk a little bit in detail about it, the memo basically says that this is a golden opportunity for us to fire people.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, that is in a nutshell, but there's like kind of more to it in the sense that like this really is the true motivation behind the shutdown. I mean, I think the motivation behind the shutdown is twofold, maybe more. One of them is to vilify Democrats, to create a crisis which can be pinned on the Democrats, and the second one is to sort of carry out Russ Vought's dream of reducing the size of the government, of firing federal employees. He said he's wanted to traumatize federal employees, or federal employees should live in trauma about their job. I mean, he's said these things. He's openly talked about how the federal government, taxes are too high, the federal government's too big, there's too many people that get paid for doing nothing, blah, blah, blah. And look, you've said this before too, Brian. Look, I'm all for revamping bureaucracy and eliminating inefficiencies. Just go to like a DMV, and that's our driver's license agency in California. Go to the DMV and you'll see how much inefficiency and bloat there sometimes is. But to eliminate, just en masse, just get rid of overnight, summarily just fire people from their job and use the government shutdown as a justification to fully eliminate their job, not temporarily put them on leave or furlough them, just fire them, to use that as an excuse. I think it's sort of cruel, and it's short-sighted. There's no deliberate plan here.
Well, it's right. It's cruel, and it's cruel in the sense that these are people who have families who depend upon a job for their livelihood, and it's short-sighted in the sense that, yes, if you want to reduce the workforce, you want to be more efficient, you don't go in and do it with a chainsaw, and that's effectively what they're doing. Now, I want to point out exactly, there's certain points in this that I want to focus on. So let's sort of dissect it quickly, Sean.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to point out is that the memo specifically says that this is allowed, and it sort of creates the justification for it. And the idea is, once funding, it's called the lapse memo, because if there's a lapse in appropriations, which is what happens in a shutdown, that justifies, or it creates a legal mechanism for a reduction in force. And it instructs agency heads to start considering sending those out, because there's no other funding mechanism for their job.
That's the key shot, which they're trying to very cleverly work on here, which is they say once the government has been shut down, Congress hasn't appropriated money. And the president then can do an end run, because there's no specific appropriation. The president then can do whatever he wants with respect to the workforce, and this is exactly what this administration is about. This administration is about, we're going to circumvent Congress, we're going to do whatever we want to do, and we're looking for every opportunity, every open door we possibly can. And of course, the government hasn't strict funding. They just don't have the funds because of the rules. It isn't that they've removed it. So that's completely baseless. And at least one court already has picked up on that without the benefit necessarily of this memo. You can't do that. But the other thing that I want to point out that these people do is they focus on the fact that during a furlough, we can give a required 60-day notice before we terminate an employee, because apparently that's required in certain aspects of the civil service. You've got to tell people they've got 60 days and they're going to lose their job. So what they say is, while people are furloughed, we can send out the notices. And in fact, we want you, the department heads, to start doing this right away, is sending out these notices while they're furloughed. So we don't have to wait for these people to come back. We can start triggering the law.
Yeah, which is weird because it's contrary to the rights that they have under, because we've said this before, there's the Civil Service Act, there's different collective bargaining agreements. These people are unionized. They're employees. They're not slaves of the federal government. They're not volunteers of the federal government. These are employees that have an employment relationship with the federal government, and they have certain rules that need to be followed. And this memo appears to just basically try to do an end run around all of those different laws. And look,
now the other end run they're trying to do, Shant, at the same time, is they're trying to say, and this is all leaked information, so I haven't seen the actual memo itself, but they're trying to say that when you're furloughed, you don't get paid. And when you're terminated, you don't get paid. But we believe, says the administration, that we don't even have to pay them their back pay once we give that notice. We don't have to catch it up because they've been furloughed, whereas other furloughed employees will receive pay once the government gets funded.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea behind it, right? Just slash all of this, as you said, using a chainsaw to get rid of this.
Yeah, so imagine you're that person, Shant, who has a government job. You're working at your job, and presume you do a good job. You work hard, and you're now furloughed. You're expecting that once the government's funded, you're going to get the money back. You're going out. You're maybe putting stuff on your credit card to be able to survive. And all of a sudden, you get a notice from the federal government that you're going to be terminated. And oh, by the way, you're not going to get your back money.
Yeah, I mean, this is all sort of part of, it's consistent with the theme for this administration, which is the executive has unlimited power. It's consistent with Russ Vought's beliefs that the presidency and the OMB get to control spending and all of these things. In fact, one of the things that Russ Vought, I think one of his goals are to overturn or to rule that, get the Supreme Court to rule that the Impoundment Control Act is unconstitutional. And the Impoundment Control Act basically says that if Congress appropriates money for something, that money has to go. Congress has appropriated for it, for that project, and that's it. And the president does not have the ability. Russ Vought's philosophy, and the Impoundment Control Act specifically says that the president can't then impound that money and keep it and say, no, this can't be spent on that. Russ Vought believes that when Congress appropriates money, they're just setting a maximum. It's like a suggested maximum of how much can be spent, that it doesn't need to be spent. It's not officially committed. The president decides if it's officially committed or not, which in my view, that is a very sort of authoritarian thing. Like, well, Congress is going to allow him and he can choose if it's spent or not. It's kind of weird, but that is Russ Vought's philosophy. Very, very, very conservative and backwards when it comes to appropriations and government spending. And this is another step in that direction, to create the ability to en masse, without any regard for due process or the various laws that dictate federal employment, just get rid of people, not even pay them back pay. That's what this is trying to do. It's kind of terrifying if you think about it.
I cannot add anything to that, Shant.
Yeah. Well, this is an important issue. We'll see how it shakes out. There will undoubtedly be challenges in courts. There have been various challenges in courts already to what's happening in the wake of the shutdown. We'll keep up to date with all of that stuff. Thanks for tuning into another installment of Civil Action. I'm Shant. That's Brian. We're two lawyers at a firm called Kabateck LLP. If you have any questions, share with us your comments, your feedback. Contact us directly. Contact us in the comments. Hit that subscribe button so you keep up to date with us. And we'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.